omega to the omega, omega to the omega to the omega,
epsilon naught, epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon omega, epsilon epsilon naught, epsilon 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 naught, Cantor's ordinal, zeta 1, zeta zeta naught, eta naught, phi 4, phi omega, Pfefferman Schuyle ordinal, Ackermann ordinal, Bachmann Howard ordinal,
Omega fixed point,
Church Clean ordinal,
first uncountable ordinal, inaccessible cardinal, Merrill cardinal, weakly compact cardinal.
Absolute infinity. Transfinity. Contable absolute infinity. Strong compact cardinal. Theta infinity. Phi absolute infinity. Eternity. Absolute eternity. Hard compact cardinal. Strong absolute infinity. Big absolute infinity. Great absolute infinity. Great supergiant. Giant infinity. Great infinity. Omega infinity. State infinity. Uncountable infinity. Ordinal level breaking. Ordinal level 10,000. Ordinal level 100,000. Ordinal level million. True infinity. Great absolute infinity. Super absolute infinity. Great super absolute infinity. Super absolute infinity. Super absolute infinity. Mega absolute infinity. Super mega absolute infinity. Great mega absolute infinity. Turbo absolute infinity. Giga absolute infinity. Giant absolute infinity. Hardy absolute infinity. Absolute infinity of absolute infinities. Theta absolute infinity. Super giant absolute infinity. Monster giants of absolute infinity. Mega giants of absolute infinity. Beta absolute infinity. X absolute infinity. Zeta absolute infinity. Iota absolute infinity. Shana absolute infinity. Weka absolute infinity. Monster absolute infinity. Trans absolute infinity. Numbers breaking point. The point where no ordinal level can reach. Ordinal level infinity. Ordinal level omega. Omega of absolute infinity. Absolute of infinity. Uncountable absolute infinity. Numbers ending on point. The level 10 number will compart. Never reach infinity. Infinity ordinal. Ordinal level of absolute 0. Infinity of absolute infinities. Out of round of numbers. First key absolute infinity 10. Hail absolute infinity. Inaccessible of infinity. Unreachable infinity. Absolute infinity of infinities. The other side. Absolute infinity of weight. Infinity of absolute infinity, absolute cardinal, absolute omega, absolute epsilon, absolute now, absolute super, absolute other side, absolute eternal, absolute mega, breaking point of infinity, breaking point of omega, breaking point of epsilon, breaking point of eternal, breaking point of quantum, breaking point of God's TV, the end, T2 end, T3 end, T infinity end, T omega end, T epsilon end, T eternity end, the super end, unreachable absolute infinity, absolute infinity, absolute infinity, absolute infinity, absolute times 9 infinity, absolute mega infinity, absolute giga infinity, absolute theta infinity, absolute beta infinity, the forever, the tree forever, infinity forever, permanent infinity, permanent absolute infinity, the tree absolute infinity, way of the numbers, way of the infinity numberblocks, absolute breaking infinity, breaking number infinity, the hour of the end of the infinity, absolute infinity of ends, absolute everything, absolute everything plus 1, absolutely, absolute infinity, absolute times absolute infinity, pi infinity, zero infinity, 3 omega plus 1, 3 omega, 3 omega, 3 epsilon out, 3 zeta out, the void, VOID, 3.0.I.G, first cardinal beyond absolute everything, infinity cardinal, absolute infinity cardinal, first cardinal beyond absolute everything, unreachable cardinal, 3 inaccessible cardinal, 3 mallow cardinal, 3 key complete cardinal, absolute completed everything, 3 complete absolute. Question mark. A. Down. Bro. You chuparo I, base number, super infinity, mega infinity, biggest, unbearable now, absolute transfinity, absolute mega infinity, absolute giga infinity, absolute tera infinity, absolute beta infinity, absolute everything, absolute everything, final infinity level, final number, final level, the final ordinal level, final infinity, absolute 3 mega infinity, absolute final, the super end, wiki comport endorno, song comport endorno, the big end, the final end, absolute end, big absolute end, super absolute end, end of numbers, the last one, the final numbers. Always, forever, to her birth, the big her birth, the big at her birth, the hook her birth, the giant her birth, the super her birth, the hyper her birth, The Mega Rebirth. The Giga Rebirth. The Ultra Rebirth. The Tera Rebirth. The Kurusa Rebirth. The Super Kurusa Rebirth. The Hyper Kurusa Rebirth. The Mega Kurusa Rebirth. The Giga Kurusa Rebirth. The Ultra Kurusa Rebirth. The Zero Kurusa Rebirth. The Powerful Rebirth. The Most Powerful Rebirth. The Hardest Powerful Rebirth. The Eternal Powerful Rebirth. The Extremely Powerful Rebirth. The Deadly Powerful Rebirth. The Ultimate Rebirth.
Absolute true end.